Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. What's next in the big mystery of Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrita, Part 2, Chapter 4, Text, well, I guess it's 96. Though all these devotees are equal to the Supreme Lord in being eternal, there is still a natural distinction between the servant and the served. This distinction is eternal and real. Commentary. Sadhana Siddha devotees who have come to Vaikuntha after liberation from the material world are obviously inferior to the infallible Supreme Lord. No one should doubt that they are subordinate to him. But why should the Lord's eternal associates like Shesha and Garuda be considered subordinates? To remove this doubt, we need to understand that just as the sameness of the Lord and the jivas is eternal, so also is the difference between them. The Supreme Lord is always the served, and the jivas, no matter who they are always his servants. This is a basic fact, and no logical maneuvers will ever be able to refute it. Now, do I have to move the microphone closer, or this is okay? Okay. 197.98. These devotees are equal to the Lord in being embodiments of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, just like him. Yet, Sri Krishna has a certain inconceivable mystic potency that attracts these devotees to the sweet ecstasy of worshiping him and makes them always think that they are servants at his lotus feet. Commentary. Krishna's devotees are helplessly attracted to him, like iron filings naturally drawn to a magnet. The eternal associates of the Lord have never known another way of life, and the new residents of Vaikuntha, perhaps for several lifetimes, practiced being attracted to him before they were allowed to enter the spiritual world. The attractive force of devotional service to Krishna is inconceivable, semicolon. It works in its own way without having to be understood or even noticed. Yet, somehow, it immerses pure devotees in the boundless ocean of Krishna's sweetness and draws them irresistible to his service. Only in this way is the distinction of served and servant maintained forever. It's very beautiful, very beautiful. Somehow. $199. And so it is with his incarnations. They are also non-different from Sri Krishna Dev, for they are complete embodiments of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. But although Krishna is considered non-different from his plenary expansions, he is also distinct from them. And not only because he is their source, but also because he has his own sweet perfections. Beautiful. Commentary. Sri Krishna, the Lord of Goloka, is acclaimed in the Puranas and other Vedic scriptures for being especially sweet. The sweetness found in him is not fully present in Lord Narayana or any of his other expansions. Of course, Krishna is different from his avatars because he is their source, yet he is still further different from the Supreme as the supreme, all attractive object of love. As implied here by the word api, it is only natural that Krishna be the original personality of Godhead and that all other forms of God emanate from him. But Krishna is special, not only as the avatari, but also as an avatar. He alone is the source of all incarnations of God, and only he displays such wonderful, charming pastimes when he descends to the material world, which is true. The Puranas give evidence of these pastimes, recounting many of Sri Krishna's unequaled exploits. Paragraph. The jivas allowed to associate with Lord Krishna in his abode are surely aware that he, being the supreme controller of all existence, is much greater than they. What most impresses Krishna's devotees, however, is his infinitely variegated sweetness. By seeing his beauty and other glories, they are constantly assured that he is different from everyone else. Only by this deep appreciation of Krishna's supremacy can his most fortunate devotees sustain their exalted love for him and share intimate exchanges with him in the ecstatic tastes of transcendental rasa. Text 200. Some persons say that Lord Krishna is the exclusive embodiment of perfect eternity, knowledge, and bliss. He is, after all, the supreme Brahman, but his associates are all liberated souls who are also embodiments of Brahman. Purport or commentary. Some may propose that only Krishna is absolute because he is the supreme Brahman. Strictly speaking, this is true. But the absolute person, Krishna, also includes all his energies, so his pure devotees should certainly be recognized to be on the same absolute platform of spiritual perfection. The Lord's servants, including Anantashesh, Garuda, and others in Vaikuntha, are Brahma Maya, one with him in quality. Gyanis and yogis may become mukta, elevated to impersonal oneness with the Supreme, but the devotees of Narayana are mukta, or super liberated, because they participate in the personal oneness of bhakti. In my notes here, I underlined the word personal 4 times. (201). This equality is created by a special potency of the Lord, a playful aspect of his pure spiritual self. As Krishna assumes various forms for his pastimes, she creates varieties of ecstasy in devotional service. Commentary. How do the Lord's devotees share his supremacy? By the power of bhakti. Bhakti, the worship of the Supreme Person with love, gives a special ecstatic mellow taste, and by the influence of bhakti, the personality of Godhead displays special forms for particular pastimes. Still, persons who regard Krishna as the supreme Brahman and yet are unclear about the position of his associates may have a question. There's the question. Since the devotees who join in the Lord's pastimes have already attained liberation, oneness with Brahman, why should such devotees descend again into duality by assuming different bodies for those pastimes? The answer has already been given. By even asking such a question, one acknowledges the distinction between the served and the servant. Still, one might counter that since the liberated impersonalists and the devotees of the personality of Godhead are both in the same liberated condition, that of Satchit Ananda, nonetheless, and nothing more, the devotees of the personality of Godhead must enjoy no more happiness than liberated impersonalists. But this has also been previously answered, as the most confidential Vedic scriptures told Gopakumar on Brahmaloka from chapter 2. This is chapter 4. Jiva Swarup Bhutasya Satchidananda Vastunaha Sakshad Anubhavenapi Syat Tadrik Sukham Alpakam. The happiness that arises from directly perceiving the true identity of the Jiva soul, the entity composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, is actually very meager. The happiness of mere self-realization is limited, unlike the unimaginable happiness found in true liberation, in which one realizes one's loving relationship with the Supreme. Thus, everything Narada has said, stands unrefuted. Text 202. That's it for Narada's little talk, big talk. Shri Gopakumar said, I then asked, my Lord, divine deity forms of the Supreme Godhead, like Lord Purushottama, the master of Niladri, are present on earth, and you consider them embodiments of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Commentary. Gopakumar is very much attracted to Archana, the devotional process of deity worship. He has enjoyed the benefits of Archana in Jagannath Puri and on several higher planets in the universe. He has also heard about the glories of this process from various authoritative scriptures. Narada, however, has created a doubt in Gopakumar by telling him that the deities of the Supreme Lord are just another kind of incarnation, indistinguishable from other avatars. Really? Earlier in this chapter, text 155 and 157, Narada said, quote, there are those who playfully assume the appearance of deities. Each of these forms of the Lord has his own activities and names, yet all of them are full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, Though manifesting variety, in substance they are eternally one and the same. I don't see the contradiction. Do you see the contradiction? Text 203. Quote, the one personality of Godhead, whose body is always Satchitananda, mercifully enacts the pastime of being present in various places, in various forms. Commentary, to increase his own pleasure and show kindness to his devotees and to the whole world, Lord Krishna appears in Puri and other places as deities like Lord Jagannath. His deity forms appear not only on earth but also in other planets of Bhur Loka and in the higher and lower planetary systems. 204. What then could be wrong with worshiping those forms, disregarding everything else? I would think that no matter how this was done, it would bring great benefit. And it does. Commentary. Why should the Lord's devotee be criticized for neglecting other spiritual practices, such as Dharma, Karma, Yoga, and so on, to worship the Lord's Archa Vigraha? It seems logical that he, as the Lord's devotee, should gain directly by such dedication, since all other devotional practices are included in the worship of the deity. 205. But why, therefore, do we hear differing opinions about this from the Puranas? The Puranic statements, coming as they do from the mouths of exalted souls, cannot be less than authoritative. Commentary. 2 pages. Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas make comments that apparently deprecate the value of deity worship. For example, Bhagavatam 11:247. Here's where the conflict is. Quote, a devotee who faithfully engages in worshiping the deity in the temple, but does not behave properly toward other devotees or people in general, is called a prakrita bhakta, a materialistic devotee, and is considered to be in the lowest position. Canto 3, Chapter 29. One who worships the deity of Godhead in the temples but does not know that the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is situated in every living entity's heart must be in ignorance and is compared to one who offers oblations into ashes. And another quote, my dear mother, Canto 3, Chapter 29, Kapila Dev. My dear mother, if a person worships me with proper rituals and paraphernalia, if he is ignorant of my presence in all living beings and never pleases me by the worship of my deities in the temple, he never pleases me. Paragraph. These and other statements of Shastra, such as Pratima Manda Buddhi Nam, or the deity is meant for persons who are less intelligent, come from the mouths of great sages. And the verses cited above are the Supreme Lord's own words, retold from the mouth of Sri Shukadev. As a matter of principle, the words are the words of trustworthy authorities, such as the Lord and his pure devotees, should be accepted as true. Therefore, Gopakumara is puzzled. Any knowledgeable person would surely agree that the deity forms of the Lord, like Sri Sankarshan and others, that appeared on the various varshas of Burloka, including the deities of Sri Ranganath and Jagannath in their transcendental cities on earth, are directly the personality of Godhead and should be worshipped with faith. But The word pratima, meaning image, and archa, worshipped deity, are often used in scripture to criticize the narrow vision of immature devotees. That's the problem. And these special incarnations of the Supreme Lord, namely Sankarshan, Ranganath, and Jagannath, are also present. Themselves also present themselves as pratima and archa. Does this mean that they are inferior forms? Gopakumara hopes that Narada will clear up this doubt. Looking again for the meaning of pratima, he gave the meaning. Remember? Pratima. Two four. No. 2:6. Narada Muni is the first spiritual master for the path of worshiping the deity of the Lord. Upon hearing my question, he stood up and embraced me in extreme ecstasy and answered in this way. Commentary. By composing the Narada Pancharatra, Narada long ago became the original teacher of the method of deity worship as pure devotional service. In this verse, the word marga means path, and since it is derived from the verb mrig, or to seek, it can also be understood to mean the goal of endeavor. The goal of endeavor. Marga. Archa, marga. Pratima. We'll have to look up the word pratima. Oh, there it is, pratima. Pratima means the deity forms. It's in the next verse, 207 through 209. Pratima means the deity forms. Sri Narada said, the deity forms I've mentioned are all equal to the original personality Godhead. There is no need to even mention the glories of worshiping them. Persons who worship the Lord's deity, be it ancient, new, or even concocted, provided they worship the deity as being directly the Lord himself, will not fall down from their religious status or be otherwise at fault, even if they neglect their prescribed duties and other such principles. Rather, their behavior should be considered exemplary. And such deity worship should be regarded as exalted devotional service, yielding the best fruits. Commentary. I'm tempted to tell a story. Even irregular worship of the Supreme Lord, in his deity form is all auspicious. Period. Because of the strength of bhakti, worshippers who fail to observe all the prescribed varnashram duties are not to be considered fallen from the standards of civilized behavior, nor should they be considered unqualified for material reasons, nor faulted for imperfect knowledge of the methods of worship. Ordinarily, offenses committed in ritual deity worship bring infamy in this life and hellish punishment in the next, but worship of the Lord's deity performed with faith and devotion is transcendental. Persons who practice devotional service are excused for the lack of material qualification. From Padma Purana, Mat Karma Kurvatam Pungsam Kriya Lopo Bhavedyadi Tesham Karmani Kurvanti Tisra Kotyo Maharshayaha. Translation: if persons doing devotional service to me happen to fail to execute some of their karmic duties, 30 million exalted sages carry out those obligations on their behalf. Shoot. Paragraph. The general opinion of saintly persons is that devotional worship of the Supreme Lord's deity, is always praiseworthy, and exalted Vaishnava acharyas consider deity worship a principal activity of pure devotional service. The primary meaning of the word bhakti is seva, or service, and service to the Lord in the form of deity worship includes elements of all the methods of bhakti yoga. This worship leads to the highest perfection of life, far beyond accomplishments of the four ordinary categories of human behavior. So here's the story. It's a long story, here's the short version. When I was doing this research to find something about Raj Mohan Singh, another king in Rajasthan, some generations later, had become a very staunch Vaishnav, and he was particularly dedicated to deity worship. And it's something like Maharaja Ambarish, but even very specific. And there's some text that I want to get a copy of that gives this history. He made a decree in his kingdom. For 4 hours every morning, he would personally worship his deity. He didn't have it done by a Brahmin, he did it himself. And the decree was, while I'm engaged in my deity worship, no one should interrupt me. And if someone does interrupt me, it was no threat. He just said, I'm not going to be interrupted, come later. And so he ruled his kingdom in that way. There's a longer version, but he had a brother who was also a king and envious of his brother. And he came to know that his brother, forget the names, was going to, had a practice that for 4 hours he wouldn't be interrupted no matter what. And so his envious brother gathered a huge army and circled his palace or kingdom or whatever, just at the time that he knew his worship was going on, and began attacking while he was doing his worship. And everybody knew, don't interrupt the king, no matter what. But the king was being attacked by an army, a vast army. But nobody went, and so they went to his mother, and the mother came to her son while he was doing his deity worship, and she bravely interrupted him and said what had to be said. And he looked up and said, whatever is required, the Lord will take care of, and just resumed his worship. And he had just begun his worship. So then the story goes, this is a history that anyway, from a text that it's been told that Bhaktisiddhanta made reference to. I want to verify that as being authentic history of kings, etc. Because, we Bhaktisiddhanta would give so many details about so many things. So he had sources that he trusted. This was one. So in short, one soldier went to where the king's horse was and requested the king's horse. So he got on the horse, went out and single-handedly defeated the entire army of this other fellow, his brother, and either killed people or chased them away or mutilated them lying on the battlefield. Came back, returned the horse, and just disappeared. So, of course, it was his deity. Took care of it. And when he finished his deity worship, he, knew what he had to do. He got ready for battle. And when he saw his horse all fatigued, breathing heavily, he wanted to know how's this? And the stable keeper said some man came and rode the horse and defeated everybody. Everyone's already defeated. So he didn't know what to make of that. So he got on the horse, went out in the battlefield, and saw everyone was defeated. And he saw his brother lying on the battlefield, and his brother wasn't dead yet. So he went to his brother and asked, "Why did you do this?" And he said, "Before I answer that question, can you answer me, who was that person riding on your horse?" He defeated my entire army, practically single-handedly. And then the king, the Rajput king, could understand that was the Lord. And so he offered some words saying, "That very person who I worship every day is the one who came and destroyed your army. He was the one riding my horse. And you're very fortunate because you've had his darshan. And I have not been so fortunate to see him in that form. So you're very blessed. So I'll let you live." And he went back and, he continued his worship with great faith. His brother also took up some worship of some deity form. We have that nice story that I'm sure there's some scriptural or not scriptural, some historical reference that it is rooted in, where King Prataparudra and Jagannath and all that story. So this is one of those that may be less known because it's not Jagannath. It's his deity was Shamsundar. But he had full faith and he was just engaged in worship of the deity. And the Lord will take care. Whatever it needs to be, the Lord will take care. He wasn't neglectful. He, got on his armor and his sword and his everything later. Okay, so text 210. Siddhi Syat Bhagavat Drishtya. One can reach perfection by honoring even a blade of grass, provided one sees within it the presence of the Supreme Lord, or by just once uttering or hearing even a faint semblance of the Lord's name. Wow. Worship a blade of grass. Commentary: one who understands that in a blade of grass, the Supersoul is present, all along with the Jiva soul, who therefore honors the grass by watering it and bowing down, is in fact performing devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Such a person easily attains liberation or whatever else he desires, and the same results are obtainable from just once pronouncing or hearing even a dim reflection of the Lord's holy name. Shui 2:11. How then can one find fault in worshiping the deity, in whom the Lord personally appears, who evokes remembrance of the Lord, who has been consecrated by mantras, and who is the receiver of all kinds of devotional service. I hope Narada is going to explain why they say these other things. Commentary. When the deity of Lord Vishnu has been properly installed with avahana, invitation, mantras, and is worshipped by devotees who have put aside all misconceptions that he is a statue of wood or stone, such worship is faultless. Even logicians have to admit the existence of inconceivable potencies in special worldly things, gems, mantras, potent medicines, and so on. If even material objects act in ways undetectable by mundane senses and intelligence, then why can't the Supreme Lord in his own creation appear as he wants? The Lord's deity helps the conditioned souls in their meditation by allowing them to see the Lord's form. Those who visit the deity see the beauty of all his limbs simultaneously and are effortlessly transported to the ocean of devotional ecstasy simply by worshiping the deity. One performs all 9 processes of bhakti yoga: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the Lord's lotus feet, worshiping, offering prayers, becoming the Lord's servant, becoming his friend, and surrendering everything. Text 212. Kadapi Krishna Pratima. There we go. There's this Pratima, the deities. Archana Batam. Okay. Text 212. Persons who properly worship Krishna in his deity form never disrespect Krishna's devotees. And if, because of being absorbed in worship, they accidentally do so, the devotees make light of such offenses and praise the worshippers. Commentary. Although worship of the Supreme Lord's deity is a powerful means of devotional service, its good effects can be completely nullified by offenses against Vaishnavas. Narada here assures Gopakumar that serious worshippers of the deity are spiritually mature enough to know that they must carefully avoid displeasing any Vaishnava. Moreover, if a careless neophyte absorbed in deity worship neglects or disrespects Vaishnavas, the Vaishnavas merely overlook the trespass and instead see only the worshipper's sincere attachment to the Lord. Texts 2:13 through 15. There are others, however, who concoct some new image and call it Lord Hari, but who actually see that form as different from the Lord. They worship with the idea that the deity is no more than stone or some material substance, and they respect neither the devotees of Lord Hari nor living beings in general. Proud of their worship, they transgress the injunctions of the Vedas and the Lord. These foolish worshippers, the lowest of all the Lord's devotees, do not obtain the promised fruit of worship. Commentary. When criticizing those attached to deity worship, here we go, the scriptures are really speaking about offensive worshipers. It's important. Who think the deity only an image of the Supreme Lord, not the Lord in person. Such idolaters consider the deity mere stone, wood, or metal. They concoct their own forms of the Lord, unaware that the authorized deity appears by his own plan. It is a 5-page purport. And they are oblivious to the presence of the Lord in his devotees, because such offensive worshipers lack proper respect for the deity and the Vaishnavas, those worshippers naturally offend all living entities and violate the basic principles of the Vedas. Paragraph. Some Vaishnavas are free from the influence of the modes of nature, and others are still conditioned by good dispassion and ignorance. The offensive worshippers described in this verse, are the lowest of the Lord's devotees, the Prakrita Bhaktas. Quote 11:247. A devotee who faithfully engages in the worship of the deity in the temple, but does not behave properly towards other devotees or people in general, is called a Prakrita Bhakta, a materialistic devotee, and is considered to be in the lowest position. Paragraph. The scriptural statement, Pratima Manda Buddhinam, or the deity is meant for the less intelligent, refers to this lowest class of devotees who lack spiritual discrimination. They do not receive the benefits of the deity worship described in the Shastras. And then comes 3:29-22. One who worships the deity of Godhead, in the temples, but does not know that the Supreme Lord as Parama is situated in every living being's heart, must be in ignorance and is compared to one who offers oblations into ashes. In other words, the personality of God does not accept their worship. That's good, he's explaining. Paragraph. As stated by Sri Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev 7:9-11, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always fully satisfied in himself. Therefore, when something is offered to him, the offering, by the Lord's mercy, is for the benefit of the devotee, because the Lord does not need service from anyone. To give an example, if one's face is decorated, the reflection of one's face in a mirror is also seen to be decorated. In this prayer, Prahlad describes Lord Nrsingadev as the personal master, Prabhu, of all living entities, and as Prahlad's own life and soul, Atmana Prabhur Ayam. Everything the Jnani, the Jiva, everything the Jiva possesses, everything the Jivas possess, actually belong to the Supreme Lord. Nonetheless, the Lord, as merciful as he is, rejects the respect and offerings of Jivas who are materialistic fools. Janad Abhidusha. The symptoms of their foolishness are described in Brhad Bhagavatamrita. Such conditioned souls consider the Supreme Lord's deity a material statue and his worship an empty ritual, and they disrespect the Lord's devotees and living beings in general. Therefore, the Lord is not interested in their offerings. Sri Narada likewise states in the Bhagavatam 4:31-21. Quote, Narada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes very dear to those devotees who have no material possessions, but are fully happy in possessing the devotional service of the Lord. Indeed, the Lord relishes the devotional activities of such devotees, but persons who are puffed up with material education, wealth, aristocracy, and fruitive activity are very proud of possessing material things, and they often deride the devotees. Even if such people offer the Lord worship, the Lord never accepts them. Paragraph. This is 3 more pages remaining. There are several different ways to understand the prayer by Prahlad Maharaj cited above. That the Supreme Lord is fully satisfied with his own assets means that he is content with his own feelings of intense bliss. Nonetheless, he accepts the offerings of intelligent devotees, and because he is very compassionate to his devotees, for their benefit he acts out of character, gratefully accepting offerings even though he is not in need. Or, from another point of view, the word nija labha purna indicate that the Lord becomes fully satisfied, purna, by prema, the labha attainment achieved by his intimate devotees. Or he is satisfied by the worship they perform, the labha that he receives from them. Because he obtains the fulfillment of his desires from his pure devotees, he is not attracted by the offerings of others. Paragraph. That's half a page. One should not think, however, that the imperfect worshippers simply waste the wealth and other resources they expend for the Lord. When one worships the Supreme Lord in any fashion, the result is always for one's benefit, atmane. The example given by Prahlad Maharaj is that a person's beautiful features, including the auspicious tilaka on his forehead, naturally appear together with his image reflected in a mirror. The beauty of the reflection, however, is but a mere semblance of the person's original beauty. In the same way, ritual worship is but a semblance of pure devotion. Materialistic worshippers, therefore, do not achieve the primary goal of devotional service, pure love, because the Lord is not actually pleased by their offerings. They achieve only material benefits. This is very interesting, isn't it? Paragraph. Another way of looking at Prahlad's prayer is that although the Lord is very merciful, he does not accept the worship of the unintelligent who lack spiritual wisdom and who therefore worship for their own selfish purposes, atmane, not for the Lord's pleasure. But why do such people worship the Lord to accomplish their selfish ends? Because without making an offering to him, they cannot achieve their own purposes, just as a mirror cannot reflect beautiful decorations of a face that has not been decorated. Paragraph. From another point of view, out of compassion, the Supreme Lord accepts whatever an intelligent devotee offers him. But if a devotee worships the Lord for selfish purposes, the result is only a semblance of what it could have been, like a person's beauty reflected in a mirror. The immature devotee receives some unimportant reward instead of the real success of pure devotion. Therefore, only worship offered with the unalloyed motive of pleasing the personality of Godhead leads to the treasure of prema bhakti, in which the devotee attains Sri Vaikuntha or some other abode of the Lord and is able to see him in person and associate with him. Okay, page and a half remaining. Still another understanding is that because the all-powerful Supreme Person is already fully satisfied with his own achievements, he is not really interested in the offerings of the materialistic jiva souls. But even if the Lord has no reason to accept such worship for his own benefit, why doesn't he accept it for the benefit of his worshippers? The answer is that when the Lord refuses the offerings of persons too foolish to know what is good for them and what is not, he is actually bestowing his mercy. Seeing the frustration and anxiety of someone who has spent wealth and effort for ritualistic worship without devotion, the Lord fully ignores the worship to induce the materialistic person to stop his useless endeavor. Paragraph. Then again, a person trying to worship the Lord may be unintelligent, avidushaha, in the sense of not knowing the proper way to worship. In the course of performing sacrifices, he might, for example, commit violence against innocent animals. Still, shouldn't the chief of all worshipable lords reward even such a worshiper? The answer, again, is that the Supreme Person is all merciful. If he were to encourage such an offering by awarding benefits, he would be harming the sacrificial victims. Paragraph. Or, being satisfied with his own assets, the Lord neither accepts the offerings for his own sake, nor accepts them for the sake of his worshippers. This is because the materialistic worshippers are less intelligent, and the Lord is very kind. In general, a person cannot be certain whether the homage he offers to the Supreme Lord will result in his own benefit. He simply continues his labor in ignorance, taking trouble to collect the items required for worship. Meanwhile, the Lord, who cannot tolerate seeing the worshipper suffering such inconvenience, refuses to accept the worship, thus showing his supreme compassion. Two more paragraphs. Or, what use then is the attempt of an ordinary person to worship the Lord? The attempt is useful because it can eventually lead to one's complete fulfillment, atmane, whereas no other effort will. The beauty of one's reflected face in a mirror is one's own beauty only, and no one else's. Without the original beauty, no beauty will appear in the reflection. In other words, a candidate for devotional service must make an attempt, even if imperfect, to satisfy the Supreme Lord. There is no other way to achieve the perfection of life. Final paragraph. And yet, another way to understand Prahlad's prayer is this: the Supreme Lord, being the personal friend and master, Prabhu, of all living entities, is satisfied, Purna, when his devotees succeed, Nijalabha, and when he can thus have their loving association. Or, even though the Lord is already fully satisfied, his desires being all fulfilled by his pure devotees, doesn't he accept the offerings even of less intelligent persons? Of course he does. And he goes out of his way to accept their worship. But why? Because he is all kind. If he did not accept the offerings of those who worship him, those worshippers would never be able to achieve the desired success unless the jivas offer whatever they can to the personality of Godhead. They cannot gain any real benefit. Even impure worship in the short term only marginally fruitful will gradually lead to complete perfection if the Supreme Lord kindly accepts the worship. To be continued. More on deity worship. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.